Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, a channel for film reviews, discussions, and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tate and Niawa, and on today's show we'll be giving our overall thoughts and review on the Hunger Games trilogy, or I guess Hunger Games series, because there'll be 4 films when all is said and done, in anticipation for the final one, Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, which is released it's towards the end of this month, I think, isn't it?
So, yeah.
Or midway through this month, yes, so this will be a massively spoiler-filled review today, partly due to the fact that these films have been out for quite a while, and with a sort of broad discussion like this where you go through the entire series of something, it's just easier for us to just go straight into spoilers and give the films a proper deconstruction and talk about it in depth. So we'll be kicking off with, obviously, The Hunger Games, which was the first one, which was released in 2012, directed by Gary Ross, based on the best-selling books by Suzanne Collins. So the plot, I guess, for anyone who doesn't care about spoilers and is interested about it, it's set in a dystopian post-apocalyptic future where boys and girls from districts that are controlled by a government are forced to compete in things called the Hunger Games, where they have to fight to the death until there is only one victor. And we are basically introduced to our main characters. Jennifer Lawrence, who has got massive, massive praise from this film, and I almost want to say that this is sort of what brought her to the forefront. I mean, since this film, she's gone on, done loads and loads of other films. She's won an Oscar. So she's going places, and I think she's going to be glad, really, when this series is done, because she was clearly brought in under contract for these entire films when she was just starting out as an actress. Now she's bigger. I think she's going to be in much more high demand after this.
I feel like when she started the film, she was a reasonably low-key actress. She was in X-Men's franchise, and she was immediately into this franchise thinking, oh, it's a solid, guaranteed job, because at that time she wasn't a big enough actress to have a solid, guaranteed job. Getting into 2 film franchises is an easy way of doing that. Now, though, I'm feeling it, from her acting performances in general, she wants to break free of the franchises and maybe go out and do films like Joy that's coming out later on this year. She also is going to be in the next X-Men Apocalypse film. She signed up for a couple of films, but to be honest, between the last Hunger Games film, Mockingjay Part 1, and this film, she's done nothing. For one whole year, she has not released any films. She's just been acting in films, but nothing's been released. So maybe she wants to break free of this chain finally. Then maybe in the future she'll be able to break free from X-Men Apocalypse, and then she'll be free to act how she wishes.
And I'm not saying she's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but you can kind of see it, as you said, especially I saw this in Days of Future Past. You can almost sense how restless she is to move on and, as you said, break out of that sort of franchise trap. And really, the smaller projects are what get a lot more notice anyway. But yes, so I guess we can talk about our thoughts before going into this. As I said, the first one came out in 2012. I literally only started watching these a few days ago. With films like this, the sort of ones based on best-selling books, probably excluding the Middle-earth films and the Harry Potter out of this, I just never seem to gravitate towards them because they always seem very teeny. They're very focused on romance, and we'll get onto the whole subject of the whole love triangle thing in this later on. But they're just not my kind of movies, really, and I'm seeing that now with these ones that have come out. Is it The Maze Runner?
Yeah.
They're very similar. They always have a very similar style. Twilight as well is the infamous example.
Maze Runner is less romance, I'd say, because I've watched the second Maze Runner film, and I know what happens at the end of that, and I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah, well, it's... I guess it's like the aesthetic and the tone, because you can always tell them, really, can't you? And then you go, oh, great, we're going to have these films for the next 3 to 4 years, and they'll probably split the last one into 2 movies again, which we are definitely going to talk about once we get onto Mockingjay. But, so yeah, I didn't really know all too much about it. I knew the rough outline of the plot. I knew about the whole controlling government, and that Katniss, Jennifer Lawrence's character, is the one who's ultimately trying to take it down. I was also aware before going in of the similarities and how they say that the story was copied from the Japanese novel and film Battle Royale, which Hunger Games, its plot is mostly almost identical. I think the plot to Battle Royale is that you've got a school bus of students who are then forced to kill each other on an island where there's only one winner as
Yeah.
some kind of prize. So it is very similar in that. But one thing I want to talk about as well, especially, is the themes in this film, because I think one of its strengths is how it's a real mashup of like different, not cultures, but you can see sort of elements in there. Like you've got the whole chariot sort of scenes where they ride out. It's very sort of Greek mythology or almost Roman, where they'll parade in front of the emperor and give them a show. And I love that it's really sort of a commentary on celebrity culture and the status of fame and the whole um, playing the politics behind the camera. Like she's told what to say, she's told how to dress, and ultimately this image she's having to create for herself during the games. I find that almost as fascinating as the games themselves.
Yeah. Funny thing is, though, something that I find a lot with a lot of book series nowadays, they say that that was their initial intention. I think that the writer of the books and the director of the film just thought, do you know what? We're just going to have a bit of political drama. It's going to be a massive fight. They're going to have kids killing each other. That'll bring in the views. They're not really thinking of the actual underlying tone of it. They're just trying to bring in the views. I'm not saying that these films are bad. These are reasonably decent compared to some of the standards of other teen films, which, like Twilight, Divergent series.
Oh yeah.
Like, they are way above the standards of those. It's just that I feel like movies nowadays sometimes, especially with this type of film, they're not trying to emulate something. They are just trying to show you some action, a little bit of romance, the whole teen dream type thing.
I don't know. I think there's a lot more to this film like that, because I do think that in some respects the themes are almost as subtle as like a sledgehammer to the cranium. But I should also say this as well, that I haven't actually read the books to the Hunger Games.
Oh no,
so
I haven't read the books either.
I'm
My
still
sister
very
has read
much
them many times, and
I'm
she's
still
been
very much
shouting in my ear for the last week.
But yeah, like I don't know ultimately how the story's going to end. I know that the ending sort of divides a lot of fans. I have heard that, so I am looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. But I do think those elements are in there because they make up quite a significant portion of these films, really. I mean, you've got the whole thing with, honestly, my favourite character in this film, and I love the actor to death as well, Stanley Tucci, who plays, I think his name is Caesar, I'm just having a look here, yes, Caesar Flickerman, who's like this sleazy, fake TV presenter, like he's very false with everyone, he pretends to cozy up to them, and it's just putting up on an image as much as everyone else. But one thing as well that, I know I'm sort of going on massive tangents here, but one thing that took me off guard was sort of like the fashion in the film. Like you've got the poor districts, like the districts. I think there's 13 districts. District 13 was razed to the ground, where everyone's sort of like kept in. And with there, I think you've got sort of themes of like the Holocaust and segregation and things like that. We see one camp in the second film where it's exclusively kept for black people, and I do think that you get a sense of playing the themes from history within that.
Yeah, maybe.
And then you get the capital, where especially like Effie Trinket, played by Elizabeth Banks, who's almost unrecognisable in this film. She's decked out in almost sort of Victorian or Elizabethan style gowns and wigs and makeup, and it's completely ridiculous. And I'm assuming that's how it's in the book, but it is a very sort of full force way of showing the difference between the poorer districts and the rich ones. But it's just hilarious to see Stanley Tucci in sort of like blue dyed hair, like bouffanted with a ponytail at the back, so much eyeliner on and eyeshadow and like lipstick. It's hilarious to see the people dressed in this way. But no, like all the stuff where she's forced to go on TV and things like that, I loved all that kind of stuff. Where it really fell short for me was the romance side of it, and we're going to get onto, I think we should get onto some of the other characters now. You
It's
more
a
so in the
triangle.
second, Yeah, more so in the second film, I would say. We sort of get the seeds of it planted in the first film. But in Catching Fire, it comes to the forefront. You have the characters Peter Malark, played by Josh Hutcherson, and you've got Gail Hawthorne, played by Liam Hemsworth. As I said before recording, the least talented one of the Hemsworth brothers.
Yeah, the unfavoured Hemsworth for
Yeah,
most people.
and it frustrates me because it seems like I know this is a fault of the books and not the films because the films are an adaptation, obviously. Um, why does everything need a love triangle? Tell me. It seems
Yeah.
like every single adaptation of a book has to have that as a requirement.
Not only that, but I'd be okay with this film, maybe a little bit more, if the love triangle made sense. This love
Yeah.
triangle makes absolutely no sense at all. Because I'm pretty sure that every girl, boy, woman, child, like everyone screaming in the cinema says, Katniss, why are you not with Gale? Why are you going with Peter? Peter is a wet lettuce.
Yeah.
Why aren't you going with Gale? It confuses me, and I'm pretty sure it confuses a lot of people going to the cinemas as well on why this relationship is going on.
Yeah. Well, Peter and Gale are pretty much completely polar opposites in terms of the spectrum
Oh yeah,
of the male sex because you've got Gale, who's the very sort of machismo alpha male type, like you
confident.
sort of, yeah, like you'll see like a jock at like a frat party or something in
No, but
America,
not only
like,
that, but he's like the jock, but the nice one. The one who is always nice, has done everything for Katniss, like, and everything like that. And then you got Peter, just sat in the background, eating his bread. Not even
well,
a
yeah,
sandwich,
like,
just bread.
and I think this is. I don't know if this is a fault of the film. Maybe it's developed more in the books, but like the relationship with Gale and Katniss at the very start of the first film, we sort of just get a sense of like a vague camaraderie that they've been in the same district for a long time, and they look out for each other. He talks about running away with her and everything like that. And then with Peter, he is very whiny. I compared him before recording to Hayden Christensen from the Star Wars
Oh
prequels.
god.
Um, he is very weedy in that respect, but I think that their relationship develops throughout the films in that they're both going through this traumatic experience of being in the games together and both going through the same situation of playing the politics behind the camera, of being forced to go through all these ordeals together, go on the same interview shows, both have a stylist, and I mean they share the same crew. You've got, as I said, Effie Trinket, who's like their um, consultant of how to act and manners
Yeah.
and how to speak, and then you've got their mentor who they're paired up with, played by Woody Harrelson, the character of Hamish Abernathy, who's awesome in this film. So I think that their relationship ultimately blossoms because they are together in this situation. The only thing is, I don't know whether it's because Josh Hutcherson isn't a great actor, or maybe that the relationship's a bit underwritten. It just seems incredibly forced, and as I say, like very common to these kind of teen movies,
Yeah.
where it seemed very Twilight to me, like the whole love triangle thing in that, where you had, I don't even know the names in that, you had Kristen Stewart, you had oh, what's his name, the vampire guy, Robert Pattinson, and then you had the werewolf one. Like everything seems to be like that, and that is, if I'm gonna pick out a big fault of the film, it would probably be that whole relationship side to it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I feel like the film was, I mean, taken from Japanese concepts. People have done very good films from original Japanese films, thinking of The Magnificent Seven as a good example of that. I feel like with this one, if you took out the love triangle, then it would have been a brutal film. I mean, they could have made this film into like an 18 if they'd taken out the love triangle teen angle. And I would
Yeah,
have watched the hell out of that. That would
and
have been amazing.
I believe the book is a little bit more gory. And I know that with the first Hunger Games film, they did release an unseen version, which unfortunately wasn't the version I watched. I don't think it's all that much longer. I think it's literally just a matter of seconds. But I think you do see a bit more blood, a bit more gore. And before moving on, we should actually probably talk about the games themselves in the first film.
Yeah.
Donald Sutherland plays President Snow. Um, and I love Donald Sutherland in this movie. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else. He looks very familiar. He's obviously Kiefer Sutherland's dad, but he plays such an amazing villain and I don't know if he plays villains in other stuff. He's got that way about him. You know how like Christopher Walken usually always plays a villain. Like you've got an actor that always is tethered to those kind of roles. He seems very much similar in this, and he plays it so well. He plays it almost like he's in a very very serious movie. Like I can imagine this guy in a sort of like old school Die Hard type movie, like a Hans Gruber kind of role.
Well, he was
He's,
in MASH, if that
yeah, he
helps.
was. Yeah. Um, so like the games themselves obviously ran by him. Um, in the first one, it takes place in an expansive wood, and now I've seen these. It really reminds me of Cabin in the Woods, like when you've got the whole like team of
Yeah.
scientists like controlling everything, like adding monsters in, adding certain weather effects and everything like that to control
In
and
fact, I'm going
keep
to
the
find out
people
when Cabin in the
contained.
Woods came out.
I think it
2012,
was
same year.
yeah, and I think as well that Cabin in the Woods was filmed quite a few years before it was actually released, and then sort of like shelved. Um, but again, like I don't know when the books came out, so it's entirely possible that the books came out first. Um, but yeah, like with the games, it does get very sort of gory, I would say, but it happens off camera.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the grit and realism is lost because of that, and that's clearly the case that if they'd have kept that in, it would have been a 15. But we want to appeal to the teen demographic here to get more money from it, and you can see it worked because it was done on a budget of 78 mil, which is relatively low for a film like this. You would expect them to get loads more, especially when they knew that films such as this were incredibly bankable, like the adaptations of books. And it made just shy of 695 mil back, which is
Oh my god.
staggering.
It's impressive. It really is.
Yeah.
Is that one of the most profitable films of all time then?
Um, I'm not sure now. It might be most profitable if you're going from budget, definitely. Um, One of the things I hate in this film, though, and I guess this goes to the direction, and thankfully the following two films put an end to this. There is an ungodly amount of shaky cam in this movie.
Yeah.
Now, I know shaky cam has its place. I get the stylistic reasons behind shooting stuff in shaky cam, but it's near enough all the way through the games, and it's really sort of disorientating, especially when you try to focus on who's who, and that's a big part of it as well. Like the whole members of the team, you want to see who's being whittled down, and when the camera's just shaking around like crazy, you can't tell who's dying, who's fighting who, and it stuff like that bothers me because you want the camera to be pulled back enough so you can see the action that's happening.
No, that's
And
fair enough. They,
another problem to go with the games, I think we could talk about as well, is that you really don't get to know anyone in the games. I
no.
know there's quite a lot of people, and I think the following film does a better job of this, but no one outside of like Peter, Katniss, and the main antagonist have any kind of identity.
No, I'd agree with you there. You've got, oh, what's her name? Everyone loved her. Was it Poe?
Oh, yeah,
The little
the little
girl
girl,
from
yeah,
District 7 or one of those
yeah,
districts there.
she's not on the main cast list, but yeah,
Yeah, I feel like she was the only other person who really kind of got a backstory of some way, shape, or form.
mm,
I know they expanded on that in the second film, and I feel like that may have been down to a change in director and writers.
yeah,
That also went with the shaky cam as well, because there was a lot less shaky cam in the second film. But yeah, I feel like character development, the fact that there was a love triangle in the first place, and maybe that part of it was censored. To be honest, take all those away, and you've got yourself a really decent film.
yeah. And there were times watching the first Hunger Games, and especially now I've seen that it's 78 mil, which it's still quite a lot, but for a film like this, it's surprisingly low. It does feel very amateurish in terms of the filmmaking, like as with the shaky cam, with I don't know, just the way it's filmed around like the districts and everything like
Yeah.
that. It's almost like even Man of Steel had a lot of shaky cam as well. Like it felt like a lot of the film was recorded with a handy cam almost. And I don't know if that was a stylistic thing to try and get you closer to the action to make you feel like you were almost there with them, like in the districts, like you were watching as an observer. I'm not really sure, but I don't know. I'm glad they sort of ironed that out for the next one. And as you said, I think that the themes are sort of expanded a lot more into the next one. I think we've covered
I think we should move on to the
mostly
next one,
everything from
yeah.
this one, so we'll move on to the sequel, The Hunger Games Catching Fire, which was released the following year in 2013, this time directed by Francis Lawrence. Um, so yeah, with this one, it's difficult to decide which one was my favourite. Um, I don't know if I said before recording or during this that I think the first one has a better second act
Yeah.
than the second movie, but the second one definitely has a better first act in terms of building up and sort of expanding on the themes that were brought into the first Hunger Games film. And one of them was the one you mentioned. Really, when the film kicks off, we get a sense that Katniss is suffering from PTSD from the events of the first Hunger Games,
Yeah.
as is Peter, and we start to see the civil unrest in the district sort of start to grow because of her joint victory with Peter.
I feel like
And on...
I'm just going to say this quickly. I feel like in
Yeah,
the second
go for it.
film, the action was they were trying way too hard. Like in the
Yeah.
first film, it was like really easy to do. It was like fluid.
Yeah,
Like everything flowed into each other very, very nicely. In the second film, the first act was brilliant. Like the acting was better from all of the cast. It built a lot more tension than the first film, and it developed a lot more of the characters. As soon as they got thrown into the Hunger Games, it just went tits up.
yeah,
It
and
just,
everyone became a superhero.
yeah,
Like in the first one, people are getting injured. I think she gets her leg burnt, doesn't she, in the first
Yeah.
movie? And she's Woody Harrelson's character airdrops some sort of antibacterial paste in. So it was almost like very Rambo-ish. Like she sort of like ties herself to a tree high up to sleep at night. She's sort of like healing herself up and getting cut and you feel sort of like fatigued with the character.
yeah.
In the second one, everyone becomes superheroes. Everyone's doing crazy stunts and surviving them.
And you
Um,
don't get injured,
yeah,
you die.
yeah.
That's it. Game over.
The only sort of jump the shark moment I would say the first one did, and maybe this is explained more in the actual book, is like where the fuck those random CGI genetically modified jaguar things come from towards the end, which to me was really out of place from the rest of the tone of that movie.
Yeah.
But with this one, I mean, again, I don't know how much of it stems from the book itself. It does what a typical sequel usually does. It ups the stakes, it sort of ramps up the action from the first one, and if it's a good sequel, it develops the characters more. It definitely develops the characters more, but sometimes with action, less is more.
Yeah.
And it gets to the stage where the action scene basically takes place in a sort of tropical environment where they're on top of a gigantic clock.
Yeah. And
Where every hour,
yeah,
yeah,
every hour the challenge changes, and so
Yeah.
does the clock.
and like the clock face is spinning around, and they're all clinging onto it, and I can't remember how many more participants are in it this time. I think there's a few more because each one's teamed up with two, isn't it? They call it the quarter quell,
Yeah.
where every 25 years of the games they have an extra little one, including all of the victors from the previous years. And I liked that mechanic to it, especially because you see that Donald Sutherland's character is just purely doing it to try and get Peter and Katniss killed. And he's just being awesomely villainous and doing exactly what a villain should do. But I do think that the action maybe went a step too far, and I think it could have been toned down more. And also, a lot of sequels like this, it almost feels like a retread of the first one. It's like we had games in the first one, Hunger Games with all traps, and it's like, oh, well, now let's do the games again, but this time they're going to be bigger and they're going to be on a clock, and we're going to have more traps that they haven't seen. We're going to have birds that scream people's names. We're going to have CGI killer baboons.
We're gonna have
And
fog.
Fog that's like acid, but for some reason just washes off really easily once we submerge ourselves in water. I think it was just a bit too much, but go from the positives. I'm still undecided whether I prefer this film to the first one. In terms of direction and how it's shot, I think it's a lot better. And the themes I liked in the first one with the whole sort of culture of celebrity and everything like that, I think that's definitely played up a lot more in this. One of my favourite characters who I forgot to mention from the first one is Lenny Kravitz's character, Cena, who plays her stylist. Really, really likable character, and I don't think I've actually seen Lenny Kravitz in a movie before, but he was pretty good. He's one of the members of her team, and he does get a very emotional scene with her. The part where she goes on TV, and they basically feign the idea that Peter and Katniss are going to get married because they want their love affair to sort of sweep the nation and for everyone to talk about it. And Donald Sutherland's character, President Snow, agrees to this and says that a marriage is a good thing. And when she's on the TV, she twirls around and her bridal gown sort of burns up and it just shows a regular dress. And right there, like, the camera's focused on the stylist, and you know that he's for the chop.
Yeah.
You know that immediately
You know he's
doing
gone.
that. Yeah. And it was almost like a V for Vendetta moment for me. That's a film I love as well, which again has similar themes to this, with the whole controlling tyrannical government and sort of blackbagging people, killing people if they speak out against the government.
Hey,
And that was a really
that might
sad
be your
moment for me.
recommended movie from this one.
It might, and you know what? It's around the time of Bonfire Night, so that could definitely be one. But no, I love that, and it's a really nice scene where he sort of says goodbye to her, hugs her. She gets in the tube ready to go into the games, and just as the lift is going up to take her into the games, the sort of faceless stormtroopers come in and just beat him and drag him off, and he's gone.
Dead. Yeah. And I feel like that was a very heartwarming moment. And then
Yeah.
it just completely stops because she has to focus on the games. And
Yeah.
I know that was meant to traumatize her, but it really doesn't. She doesn't think for a second throughout the rest of the film about him, the stylist.
I
Not
guess
at
she doesn't
all.
have time because she's in this situation, but she definitely is shocked, and when she gets to the top, she seems to be fired up and determined to get through it.
Yeah.
Another moment I like, and now I'm thinking about it, most of my favourite moments do come from this film, so this probably is my favourite. The bit where she starts off in the district, they're sort of going on tour almost all around the districts, giving interviews and everything like that, and speaking to the people. And it's when she sees the families of the ones who didn't make it in the first Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And she says to one guy, I can't remember one of them, she turns to her and says, like, I didn't know him, but he tried to save me. I can't repay that debt. And then you've got the family of the girl who, did you say her name was Bo?
I'm gonna have to find out now, aren't I?
Yeah,
Really
it's
find
going to
it.
drive me mad. I can't remember her name. And that's honestly a problem I have with these films. Like, in terms of, like, Katniss, Peter, and President Snow, I really struggle to remember people's names from this film. But she turns to them and she basically says how great she was and that she was there for her in the first one. And it's that moment where the one person from the
Rue.
crowd does... Rue, that's the one. Yeah. And it's that one moment where the person in the crowd does the salute, which I guess is the sort of resistance symbol of, like, a salute to her. And then everyone does it and joins in with the famous, from this series, the Mockingjay whistle. And then you get, again, the stormtroopers come in, pull him to the front, and just do a public execution as the doors close. And I do think that being towards the start of the film, it really does sort of set the stage for this second one and sort of where the series is going.
I'd say the second one was better as a film, but I would
Yeah.
have preferred if the first film had a little bit more violence, didn't have the love triangle, then it would have been a way better film.
Yeah. And I guess before we move on, one other positive thing I want to touch on this film is that we actually do sort of get to know the other members in the games a little bit more. There's still quite a few that don't really get touched on, but I think this movie does a better job. I always say that the best film I can think of in terms of supporting characters have given you just enough is the film Predator, where the opening scene, you've got them all in the helicopter, and you all get like a personality quirk
Yeah.
and something memorable from all of them. And you sort of get that in this one where they're all training up and she's got to decide who she's going to trust, and she's sort of making the rounds around the place. You get to see each of their individual skills, and she talks to a few, including the guy who plays Felix in Casino Royale, who's like the tech guy. So I definitely enjoyed that a lot more. I would have liked a bit more than that, but I don't know if that would have bogged the film down.
Would have added to the runtime, I reckon.
It definitely would. I mean, this is a long movie. I think it's 2.5 hours. I think it's definitely the
Yeah.
longest one out of the three so far.
Let's move
I'm
on to
going
the
to let you
third.
talk. Do you want to move on to the third? I feel like I'm talking loads of this, and I'm not really giving you
Huh?
enough time to talk
Oh
about
no,
it.
this
So
is
if
going to
you
be this is the one that I am most passionate
go
about.
for
The
it.
third one.
Go for it. Take us into Mockingjay Part 1.
So, The third film is a propaganda film, or how to make a war propaganda video. That is literally it. That is all the film does, and personally, this film was not needed for the franchise. You could have cut out this film, you'd be in exactly the same place you were at the end of the second film, and it could have very easily set you up for Mockingjay Part 2 that's coming out.
And you know what? It's the frustrating thing, but it's the current trend of movies now where, oh, we have the final part in a successful franchise. Why make $1 billion when we could make two movies and make $2 billion?
Yeah.
It's some movies are necessary to have multiple parts. I will still stand up for the Harry Potter one. I know a lot
That is
of
a
people.
long book, yeah.
I know a lot of people really dislike Deathly Hallows Part 1, and yes, it is slow, but maybe it's because I cared about the characters more in that one. It was a big part of my childhood, but I thought that was a really, really good film. Really nice character development, which I think enhanced the viewing experience of Part 2.
Yeah.
And I think there was enough material there to tell the story like that. With this one, it's 2 hours long, so it's the shortest one, which is going to be the case when you split one book into two films. But honestly, I could have cut this down so much if you'd have given me like the editing shares on this film. I could have probably got this one to about half hour, 40 minutes.
I could have probably get it lower.
Yeah.
You just need the end scene in the film, the end 5 minutes.
Yeah, just cut out the filler. You know, just give me a concise telling of the story. It's an adaptation, so it hasn't got to be 100% accurate to the book. And I know that, like, there's so much in this film that just repeats itself. The whole thing, as you were saying, like, the propaganda. And I do think that that is an interesting theme, and I'm glad they do touch on that, because you get the, Peter, they say, has been captured by the not the Citadel, I'm thinking of Mass Effect now, the Capitol, and they're using him as their weapon as much as Katniss is the Resistance's weapon. And I like the parallels between the two, because you see that the Capitol is forcing, again, Peter to do these interviews with Stanley Tucci's character. That's another mark against this film. Stanley Tucci was not in it enough for me. And the Resistance is almost as bad. I don't think they really showed Katniss getting frustrated with them as much as they could have. We really only get the sense of that where they've got her like in front of a green screen, and they say, right, now we want you to like start on your knees, stand up, and pretend you've just been in a battle, and give some kind of rousing speech. And it's not coming across as authentic.
It may or may not be because of the writing at that point. I felt like that scene in general, she was told to act bad, and she acted awful.
Yeah.
Like, if you're told, okay, I want you to act disappointed, disheartened, and she acted like she didn't want to be on set. She probably thought, do you know what, I could be somewhere else right now, filming a different film, filming a different franchise, I don't care. This film sucks, I don't know. But she had no heart in that scene, even when you're meant to be playing a disheartened person. I know that sounds very picky, but you can act even if you're meant to be acting bad, and that was just not acting. That was her bored being on set.
Yeah, and another character I think we should talk about now, because really, well, we get introduced into him into the second film and in this one as well. Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's passed away since this film came out. I know he's in the second one, and I can only assume they're going to sort of rework him into it in a similar fashion they did with what's his name? He was in Gladiator. Oh God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name now.
Don't worry, we'll think of it.
But they used like CGI reconstruction on his face and body doubles to get his shots completed.
Yeah.
I really liked his character in the second one because he's sort of playing both sides, and then you find out that he's actually working with the Resistance all along. Although I think if he was working with the Resistance, he could have probably avoided a lot of the events that occurred in the second movie under his leadership. They never really touch on that unless that comes up in the next part. And you also get Julianne Moore, who plays the president of the Resistance. I mean, her character is very stock. She's sort of the hard-ass, like, president, takes no nonsense, shows no emotion. They even call her out on it in one part where they say, like, with your speeches, you could be a bit more charismatic and friendly and inspire confidence, and she's very by-the-book approach to everything. But yeah, with this film, like, it does drag. It's 2 hours, and it really doesn't need to be. We get introduced to a few other characters as well, like played by Natalie Dormer. Um, but it's this is what you get when you pad out. You have to pad out the film, and you can see the padding. You can see it so much throughout this film because we've got to stretch this one book out to two movies. And because of that, you always get the scenario where the first one is very slow, very dragging, and then the second one is just wall-to-wall action where you could combine the two, cut out a bit at the start just to get us, into it and get straight to the nitty-gritty and have the action as your third act.
Yeah.
But we never get that. So now with part two, I can only assume, I'm judging from the trailers as well, it's just going to be 2.5 hours of action. And, it might be good. I don't want to be too down on this because I still think that Mockingjay Part 1 is a solid film, but if you're reviewing the films on their own, it's definitely the weakest one so far. But as I was saying before recording with this...
It's only half a film.
It's half a film. You have to wait until Part 2 comes out and then mash part 1 and 2 together and then almost review that as a standalone film as well.
If we are mashing the two together, can I please say, this film's going to be a drag. It's going to go on forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Runtime's way too long.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be 2 hours again, so we'd ultimately have a 4-hour adaptation, but I just checked the running time, it's about 2 hours 20, 2 hours 30. So it's a lot. I don't really know what else I could talk about this movie because the entire film is... a propaganda movie, as you said. It does get a little bit tense at the end where they send in the crew to rescue Peter, but ultimately anyone with half a brain can tell that it's ultimately going to be, it's a trap. And even watching this, I was doing the whole Admiral Akbar arms flailing, it's a trap when they were going in. So it's very predictable like that. The only thing that sort of comes out of left field is where they say that, and it's in a really throwaway line as well. It seems really easy that he's been injected with the venom from the wasps. I forgot what they called. Tracker jackers, I think they're called. He's been injected with the venom from that and sort of tortured and God knows what to turn him into a weapon to kill Katniss.
But in the trailers for the next film, you can already see him talking to Katniss fine.
Exactly.
So all the tension behind that just goes immediately.
Yeah, and I was watching this film with my parents, and my mum absolutely loved these films, and she was like, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen to Peter. I wonder if he's going to be alive." I was like, "Well, you don't want to see the trailer then, because it'll basically give you that answer." But I mean, the supporting characters don't really get much to do in this one. They're just sort of there. Effie goes through a big transformation, and to be honest, this film is mostly devoid of levity. I would say it's very serious, and you often get that with the final part in a trilogy.
Yeah.
It loses some of the humour from the other ones. Really, I just loved seeing Effie sort of without all her
dressed
elaborate
down,
costume on, and she's saying, "Where are my wigs? Where are my costumes?" and everything like that. I loved that, and Woody Harrelson's character as well. Now he's sober, and
wow.
He's played it very different. Yeah, but so that's really the extent of you get of the side character in this one. I'm really sort of clutching at straws for anything else to talk about in this one.
That should be it before we
go
on. If we go into any more detail and depth, we'll be talking forever because we've got about 4 hours worth of material to talk about here, and we don't want to be talking for 4 hours.
Yeah, but we will have our review up of Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 when it's released. I think it comes out either midway through this month or towards the end, but we'll get a review up as soon as we've seen that. I guess if you've stayed with us, you've probably already seen the Hunger Games movies, but just to sort of close out our discussion and review on it, Tate, would you recommend the Hunger Games franchise?
That's a difficult one. Because if I said yes, then people would go, "Oh, that means it's okay to watch all of the other franchises." So
but not necessarily.
Well, maybe, but I'd say that possibly there may be a better alternative to this. Go watch Battle Royale. It's only one film. Character development is in that film as well. It's well shot. It may be in Japanese, and you may have to watch with subtitles. But I feel like I've seen both these films and I can compare and contrast them together. I'd say go watch Battle Royale first, maybe, and then watch this franchise. And if you want to watch a franchise similar to this, go watch the Maze Runner franchise, because that's actually starting to heat up, and I quite like that one as well.
And has Littlefinger in it from Game of Thrones.
Yes, and he is
I will support.
evil.
I will support anything that man does because Littlefinger is my favourite character in Game of Thrones. But if I'm going to recommend it, I enjoyed watching these movies. I can't say that I enjoyed them immensely. I don't know whether I'd ever sort of like go back and rewatch them over and over again, but I think they're solid enough watches. Sort of one and done for me, but I think it's got some great performances here and there. I think that Jennifer Lawrence does shine in parts. Woody Harrelson's fantastic. Elizabeth Banks, Philip Seymour Hoffman's always great. But these films for me, I just live for Stanley Tucci's and Donald Sutherland scenes because they are an absolute joy to watch on screen. There's a lot of the romance stuff which kind of bogs the film down with two, I would say, subpar actors. But I think they're okay. They're sort of just, put them on. If I'm with a group of friends, for example, and they say, right, we're going to watch Hunger Games, I'm not just going to, like, hang my head in my hands and go, oh, God, why are we watching Hunger Games? It's not like the Twilight sort of scenario with that. So I would say if you haven't seen them, and you've made it through to the end of this review, I apologise. But I would recommend watching them. Go for it, see what you think. But I don't think they're going to have any sort of lasting impact once this last one's come out. And after a few years, no one's going to be talking about it.
Do you not think there'll be like Harry Potter-styled sequels or prequels? Like the first Hunger Games ever. Yeah. They're going to go through the next 74 until they get to Katniss's.
It's possible. I don't know whether they'll do the entire 73 or 74, whatever.
How much money can they milk out of the franchise?
Oh, believe me, they'll probably still get loads of money from those as well. But I think I read in the paper, I don't know if it's just room, it probably is, knowing it's from the paper, but they said that they are considering doing a spin-off of the Hunger Games once this one's finished. And it wouldn't surprise me because you saw how successful they are. I mean, the last one probably made the least amount of them so far. It was done on a budget of 125 and made 755 back, which is still impressive, but not as impressive as they were probably anticipating. But if this one makes an absolute killing at the box office and the fans are still there, I'm sure they'll always have that idea on the back burner. But that'll do it for our review of the Hunger Games franchise. Be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you thought of it. Before we just round out now, we're going to end with our usual segment of recommended movie. Each week we take it in turns, choosing a movie that ties in with whatever we reviewed in our main show. So today was obviously the Hunger Games, and it is my choice to pick a film.
What are we going for then?
We have already mentioned the film. Both of us have actually already mentioned the film, and by the sounds of it, you've seen it already. I am going to go for Battle Royale,
Awesome.
And the link for that is purely down to the fact that everyone said that the Hunger Games films copied it. I know it's meant to be a lot more brutal, a lot more violent, and I'm filled with a bit more confidence because you said there's a lot more character development in it. And I know it's sort of like one of those cult films where... And it's just one I've never watched. One of my friends has seen it loads, says it's brilliant, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. So I think I'm going to pick that one. I was tempted by V for Vendetta when you mentioned it earlier. I honestly was, but I think that maybe because Battle Royale probably is a slightly better fit for the Hunger Games link, so I will go for that one. So, be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe. As I said, you can follow us at Facebook, at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're also on Twitter, at Twitter... /cinema_savvy. I was trying to remember the link there. And we're also on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, cinema_savvy as well. So be sure to get involved with that. The links to all those will be in the information box below. And so our film club for next week will be Battle Royale. Yep, and the main show after that, I will check very quickly before we peace out. I think it's Steve Jobs. Okay. I think we're getting that just before Hunger Games. Steve Jobs. So I'm looking forward to that one. That's been getting immense reviews from the US. So that should be our main show for the week after. So until then, thank you very much for listening.